First, it gets cold, even on a sunny day. Then the light becomes strange and fog appears, different from the usual one, dense and cold. It becomes quiet. Even the birds stop singing. And then the awakened come. Sometimes they are the dead. Sometimes monsters. Sometimes you can't see anything, but a person starts burning or turns into stone. My brother-in-law aged before my eyes and died. And what died kept moving. I nailed him to the ground with a spear and ran away. When the cold fog comes, sometimes the worst things in a person's head stand before them as if alive. My wife was afraid of water. She never learned to swim, didn't approach the stream, was even afraid of wells. She said she often dreamt of drowning. The fog caught her in the field under the forest. They said she flailed around like mad, as if wasps had attacked her. Then she vomited water. Buckets of water came out of her until she drowned. In the water that she had inside her. In the dry as a bone field. Why don't you leave this place? We are the people of Grisma. The tribe of the mad scream. We won't leave. We want to fight. This is our land. We have nowhere to go. The Old One says that the day will come when the awakened will stop coming after us. That they're going somewhere, and our settlement is in their way. But one day they will all go, and then they will take the fog with them. They draw their strength from it. Drakkainen started to think. It could be volcanic emissions, toxic and hallucinogenic, or underwater deposits of some gas, like in Lake Tanganyika. Now that you're with us, we'll manage, Berntroth suddenly declared. Drakkainen was stunned. You know how to kill the awakened. You'll teach us, and we'll go fight. We'll drive them away. The dull face started to radiate enthusiasm. Berntroth, filled with excitement, began to look almost friendly. The mad scream will be heard in the forest again. We'll return to our land. Maybe it's ergot or something similar in the grain, Drakkainen thought. Has no one walked this trail? Was I the first? For how long? Sometimes it happens that a wanderer turns out to be an awakened. He looks like a person at first, and then it's too late. Drakkainen reached for a jug and poured Berntroth some beer. Generously, could this strange man be an outsider or someone insane? I met one on the way. His name was Raven Shadow. It doesn't necessarily have to be the awakened. Hasn't anyone strange come here? About 2 years ago? Berntroth drank for a while, then finally placed the horn with its silver legs and wiped his face with his sleeve. Now everything is strange, he replied uncertainly. The War of the Gods. A bad time. Dobrodošli. Right back to the starting point, Drakkainen murmured and took a sip from his own horn. He decided to take a risk, all or nothing. I'm looking for someone. 4 people. Foreigners from afar. 3 men and a woman. They're not awakened, but they can be dangerous. And they're strange. They don't speak your language and have blind, white eyes. Berntroth raised his head from the table and pierced the wanderer with a black, beady-eyed gaze like a hedgehog's. One was here. Even before it really started. He had fish-like eyes. He should have been blind, but he could see. And he spoke in a hoarse language, like someone with a damaged mind. His nose was strange. And black hair, so long, pulled back, and his face was as white as wax. And he was tall, like no human. Taller than you. But he was a songsinger. Who? He could make things become. There used to be many like him, but not anymore. People say they killed each other. And later others killed them. Some are born like that, but it's better to get rid of them. They supposedly bring the cold fog. Why? They're the ones who stole the songs of the gods. The ones that can heal, or kill, or do different things. One knows one, another knows 10. When the gods find out about it, they send the fog to find him. That's what happened with the other one. He couldn't do much, but it was enough. He was here for 2 days and then left. And then the cold fog came, and the awakened appeared. The fog followed him. What did he do? Drakkainen asked very cautiously. They said various things. I only saw him light a fire with lightning from his hand and eat sand with water. Pale, tall, with long black hair. Van Dyken, thought Vuko. Van Dyken with a lighter and instant soup. But what about the others? Burnt Roth nodded at the table, and his hedgehog-like, beady eyes grew hazy. A narrow strip of white even appeared at the bottom. We mustn't talk about it. It's night. A bad time. The War of the Gods. All of this somewhat resembled an unsuccessful rural wedding. Despite all attempts, some were already falling asleep. Physiology and alcohol were taking over. They curled up in a ball against the walls, resting their faces on the table amid gnawed bones, puddles of beer and vegetable scraps. Those who remained sober and alert moved closer to the hearth, where the beams sizzled under the drops of light rain. Drakkainen looked around for another potential informant, realizing with some surprise that the everyday life of the Middle Ages was a ghastly, all-encompassing boredom. There was nothing to do here. They could sit over their beer or tell stories. That's about it. Besides, there was still fear. They gazed anxiously into the darkness beyond the doors, tried to keep some weapon within reach, even when they slept. They twitched nervously in their sleep like wild animals, sometimes waking and rolling their eyes in terror, then falling asleep again. Boredom and fear, long periods of monotony interrupted by short spasms of anxiety and terror. Van Dyken had passed through here. What had he been doing here? Where had he gone? The chief wants to talk to you, said the same stocky old man who had come for him earlier. The wanderer already knew that the man's name was Null sleeping on ice. He stood in front of Drakkainen and leaned over the bench, gnawing on a bone. The scout took the horn, to which he had grown accustomed, and followed the old man, trying not to step on anyone sleeping on the bench or underneath it and squeezing between the backs of those who were still feasting. The atmosphere was even worse at this end of the table, where the ruler Saturday, the supposed queen, sat stiffly, as if she had swallowed a stick, and stared blankly straight ahead. The young man chewed small bites of meat disdainfully, and the boy dozed, huddled in the fur covering his mother's arms. Grisma himself stared ahead from beneath his bushy brows and mumbled for a while. Autumn is coming, he suddenly declared. Where will a stranger who has no one go? No roof under which to shelter, no fire to warm his hands, no food in the pot. Stay with us. I will give you a woman and a house. I have more of them than men who could light a fire there. I will give you gold. Stand by my side, night wanderer, and support the weakening arm of an old man. Together we will repel the awakened, and then the fog will leave. No one can stand in the way of destiny, Drakkainen declared. And my destiny is to wander. I cannot warm myself by the fire or live under a roof until I find the 4 mad foreigners with blind, fish-like eyes. Such is the will of the gods. When the conversation is not going your way, appeal to higher powers, he was advised. The mad scream pouted. You yourself said that your gods are far away, under different stars. I doubt they have much to say here, on the land of our gods. Now, when the gods are at war and the world has gone mad, no sensible person gets involved in such matters. Who knows what they might want? Why search for something that's no longer there? The bones of those who once roamed might have long since rotted on the trail. It's not just a matter of the gods, Vuko mysteriously replied. Those foreigners passed through your country. I was told that one was here. A tall songsinger with fish-like eyes. There was a time when travelers followed the trail. They came and went, it's not known where, not known whence. Now only the awakened come. If you don't stand with us, one day they will come too often. There will be no more court of mad scream. Only ruins, bones, and crows. Stay. Stay at least until spring. Teach us how to kill the children of the cold fog. You killed one. One, Drakkainen noted. And it took me about an hour. If there were more, I probably wouldn't have survived. Take the people, the belongings, and leave this place. Find another hill and set up another court. Why live in such a place? This is the land of our ancestors, the young man snarled. Stop begging him, father. You don't need this tramp. You have a son and loyal warriors. There is still the mad Scream tribe. A young man who has seen nothing should be silent when men are speaking, Grizma snapped. This stranger brought the monster's paw today. Which one of you did something like that? Perhaps you? Even a dog sometimes brings a hand from a battlefield, but only a fool would think that the dog won the battle. Show me how you killed the monster, stranger. Show me, and I will believe that we need you. Silence! Let me fight him, Grizma mad Scream. Don't make me listen as the greatest warrior and former ship's helmsman who once led 5 ships to the ends of the world begs a vagabond for help. Don't talk to him as if you're alone. I'll fight him, and then you'll understand who will defend our land. Or I'll die, and then let him defend you. Be silent, fool. I want to gain a warrior, not lose a son. We won't fight, Drakkainen reassured him. That would be foolish. Then you will have to give it to me, the young man said, and placed a metal, intricately carved cylinder the size of a half-liter can on the table. A container with radiolaria. Drakkainen sighed. One hit with the index finger bone to the point between his eyes while simultaneously pressing the thumb to the tendon at the wrist to release the container. In a fraction of a second, they would be able to return to their interrupted conversation. Only the table was too wide. And what now, father? Will you ask for the help of a coward who's afraid to take off his armor, even under a thatched roof? Who can't be content with chainmail like a man, but has to cover himself in metal like a turtle, just because he was thrown a scrap of meat? Grizma remained silent for a moment. Very well. You must redeem the bet, stranger. Grismalfi Rainbird desires a fight. So fight him. Show us how you killed the monster. I won't kill anyone, Drakkainen hissed. I told you. Then don't kill him. But if you want to get this thing back, fight him. And then you may have to. He gritted his teeth as he went to his equipment stacked against the wall. He quickly surveyed the pile of gear, but it seemed like nothing was missing. It seems he must have taken his eyes off his belongings in the end. There was excitement in the hall. Warriors were joyfully shouting over each other, tables were pushed aside, more torches were lit, and several more lamps on tripods were brought in. Vuko removed his armor and chainmail just as Grismalfi was putting his on. He only left his left bracer on and drew his sword from the sheath. The light wasn't ideal, and the lamp smoked. The wooden floor, covered with sawdust, hopefully wouldn't be too slippery. Drakkainen unfastened his belt and stood in the center of the room, his sword held casually in his hand. The other man panted comically, with only his mouth visible beneath the helmet, revealing teeth bared like a snarling dog and clenched jaws. Grismalfi drew his sword across his shield, sending sparks flying, and let out a high, vibrating shout. His face reddened, and his eyes, visible through the slits, appeared mad. He's probably too young to have an apoplectic stroke, Drakkainen muttered in Croatian. He turned his sword so that the blade was hidden behind his arm and touched his shoulder. Only the hilt protruded from his hand. He stood slightly hunched with legs straight, his left hand raised to the solar plexus area. The man in an Aikido stance looked either spiritual or absent, completely out of place. The young man attacked very differently, dancing and jumping like a boxer. His sword and shield moved nervously in his hands as he advanced. Drakkainen watched the center of his silhouette and waited, his muscles relaxed. He figured that Grismalfi had good reflexes. The first strike could have almost come as a surprise, had it not been for the grimace that twisted the boy's lips about a quarter of a second earlier. It was a low, crafty cut to the thigh, aimed at cutting muscle. He just needed to take half a step back, then slip out of the arc of the cut. The young man regained his balance with a few dancing jumps and then delivered a cunning thrust. Drakkainen turned his shoulders and twisted, moving away from the line of attack while still holding the sword along his arm, and reached for the young man's neck. The young prince fell backward with tremendous force, his shield clattered all the way under the table. Those standing nearby jumped aside. Drakkainen waited until Grzędowicz found his shield and, with a hand shaking with anger, struck down onto his scabbard. The next attack was even faster, containing several feints, one after the other, and finally it was delivered over a tilted shield, accompanied by a wild lunge. This time, Grzędowicz flipped over the bench and pushed the table, his shield briefly stuck under his shoulder, blocking his hand. No matter the circumstances, maintain dignity. Dignity is about preparing for a fight coolly and correctly, not letting the opponent's movements unnerve you. The apparent gentleness of dignity hides 1,000 possibilities. Strength can withstand as many changes. Therefore, dignity and strength are one, Drakkainen recited to him, standing back in the middle of the hall. After 3 more attacks, the young prince staggered on his feet from exhaustion, bruised from multiple falls, and cut by the edge of his own shield. He thrust, sliced, and chopped, but his opponent was never where his sword struck. The wanderer moved like a rotating ball, like mist. However, he never revealed the blade, which remained concealed along his right hand the entire time. All he needed was a quick forefinger grip on the boy's wrist, forcing it to the ground, a shoulder twist, a step, a raising of the arm. Negligent, lazy gestures, as if shooing away an insect. A piece of bark makes fun of the storm, and a willow laughs at a hurricane, Drakkainen advised him, although there was nothing funny about it. The boy was genuinely fast and dangerous, and Vuko wasn't trained for bloodless, friendly duels. Every few moments, he had to focus all his attention to avoid acting on the reflexes ingrained in his brain and muscles, which urged him to sever an unexpectedly exposed artery, split a skull's base when he saw the back of his opponent's head, pierce the throat and brain with one swift thrust, or disembowel when the opponent flew past, propelled by his own momentum. Every few seconds brought several such moments when only the effort to restrain the semi-automatic movement of his hand prevented Grzędowicz from dying. The young man had no clue about this. He only thought about his own anger and defeat, becoming more bruised, exhausted, and humiliated with each passing moment. He grew less capable and more dangerous, especially to himself. Enough, Drakkainen thought, and in one swift motion, he knocked the prince's helmet off, then flicked it away with the head of his sword. Grzędowicz staggered, grabbed the edge of a table, and fell face-first into the trampled sawdust. He moved one leg slightly and then lay still. Drakkainen walked to the corner in the sudden silence and sheathed his sword. "He's alive," he declared, looking into Grzędowicz eyes. "In the morning, give him water and put a cold compress on his head." He reached across the table and grabbed the container of radiolaria. "This is mine," he announced. "And it will stay that way. The bathhouse where I'm supposed to sleep is a stone addition, a little 3x3 shed, attached to one of the buildings. Inside is a masonry hearth made of massive stones, a floor sculpted from petrified clay, and a wooden platform. Hurds hang from the beams beneath the ceiling, and smoke lazily drifts through openings in the roof. I feel relief and anger. I can't handle this. I can't communicate with them. I haven't learned anything, I don't understand anything, and I allowed myself to get involved in a brawl. Well done, Drakkainen. I don't have to lie in a heap with other warriors in a large, stinking hall, amidst the stench of unwashed bodies. In the hairy gloom, where someone is always coughing, groaning, scratching, or passing gas. I sit on my saddle, puffing on my pipe, and watch the embers in the hearth glow. I don't even know if it's hospitality, a privilege, or a sign of mistrust. The night is dark, and it's still drizzling outside. I can only hear the barking of dogs, the footsteps of the sentry punctuated by the clank of the shaft, the hiss of oil lamps, the creak of leather straps, the clinking of metal, and the sound of rain. Nothing more. I stand there for a moment, waiting for the sentry to notice me. He's afraid to take his eyes off the darkness beyond the gate and only sneaks glances over his shoulder. I ascend the slippery wooden rungs, making as much noise as possible. Everyone here is nervous. "Are you the stranger who's traveling alone?" The one who killed and awakened, the warrior asks, nodding toward the lance with the paw hanging over the gate. "It's me. I wanted to see the cold fog." "You can't see anything now." "One never sees anything until it's too late." "Have you ever seen an awakened?" He shakes his head. "I don't know. I saw something. Movement, fog. Sometimes only glowing eyes. Once I saw a man suddenly burst into flames. But usually, all you find is bodies. Are you going further? I'm looking for the crazy strangers with fish-like eyes. They said one of them was here. They called him the Songsinger. There was one like that. A long time ago, but there was. A tall one with black hair and as pale as a fish. He stayed for about a month and disappeared one night. He had terrible eyes, it made you feel sick to look at them. Ugly, but somehow women were crazy about him. They say Grisma wanted to kill him, but he was afraid. Right, they say, he was a Songsinger. As soon as he disappeared, the fog came, and 8 men died. They say the fog follows the Songsingers to take the songs back and give them to the gods. They say there's nothing worse than a Songsinger because his songs do, but they also bring bad luck. You can deal with anything else. There's an edge to iron, herbs and charms for poison and disease, there's even a method for women. But for a god song there's no human way. And the worst is when because of it a god finds out about you. Why are you looking for him? It's my fate, I respond evasively. He owes someone something. This isn't his place. I need to take him away. My king wants to see him. For stupid explanations are better than one good. Seems it works now as well, for the sentry nods and falls silent. I focus and activate the cipherl. Even with the enhanced vision, he didn't see much more. The same underbrush, the same bushes, the winding river among the rocks, and the dark forest on the horizon. He focused on the temperature and then saw the cold fog. It was cold indeed, about 10 degrees lower than the ambient temperature. The fog effect itself was due to condensation, but around the manor, a rippling ring of icy air was forming. Further away, bands of fog, extending towards the forest like tentacles, were visible. Drakkainen leaned against the railing and looked more attentively. The fog he saw as bluish vapor was constantly in motion. It alternately thickened and thinned, forming indistinct shapes, and it seemed that there were silhouettes of people and animals in it, along with some undefined shapes, somewhat like branches, winding tendrils, or snake-like coils. All of it remained in constant motion, changing from one to another. The fog thickened here and there into spots surrounded by intense blue, which seemed to draw warmth from the surroundings. This lasted for a moment, after which the cloud dissipated, and it appeared as if there was a grotesque, semi-human silhouette standing there. He saw something resembling a hunchbacked man with grotesquely distorted features, with hand axes instead of hands, and a skull studded with spikes, on which human ears were hung. His nose and chin resembled twisted roots and interwove with each other, only his eyes were perfectly round and fish-like. The creature's skin looked like polished, rusted metal. The longer he stared, the more monstrosities he could see, like in some kind of puzzle. It seemed that the silhouettes approached the town and stood in a circle about 20 meters from the gate. They all persistently resembled characters from Bosch's paintings. The same grotesque features, the same sadistic surrealism, except that they didn't have a fixed shape. They constantly grew, changed, pulsated. Before his eyes, a stocky, frog-headed creature suddenly stretched, straightened its skinny legs, bent its elongated torso, folded its spiky limbs underneath, and raised its triangular head with Deirdre's face, Deirdre Mulligan from Derry, with huge, wide, snake-like eyes and a flowing manner like a tangle of glowing wires. He saw a pair of breasts flapping with bared teeth and shuddered. Like a narcotic trip, he thought. This damned fog is hallucinogenic. He only saw the creatures in infrared. They did nothing. They just stood and watched. They were looking at the paw hung above the gate. Drakkainen shook his head and looked normally, without the temperature distribution, only with enhanced light sensitivity. "Do you see anything?" he asked the guard. "Fog," he replied, which was true. Again, he saw only the fog,